As if it hasn't been tough enough for some home sellers, imagine trying to sell your home, having it on the market while you're cleaning up a flooded basement or a leaky roof. The bad weather has had a big impact on the housing market. Here to talk about that and other developments is Darius Solomon, associate broker at Prudential Douglas Elliman. Darius, good to see you.
Good morning.
You know, the weather has had a huge impact. Just looking at the number of people who have had to deal with these things, flooded out basements, but also the weather overall really affects the buyer-seller mood.
It definitely does. And these are seasonal patterns. You have to look at the weather. If it's really bad outside, just the same way you might not want to go shopping, it's the same situation with looking for a home. And when we've come off of some serious consecutive weeks and months of bad weather, it's definitely had some of a weather hit on some of the sales.
Now, we've looked at the big news this week was a big plunge, and really what some people are saying is a pretty significant plunge when they compared existing home sales over years, something like the lowest in 18 years. How much of that can we attribute to just what's been going on weather-wise?
Well, it's important to note, first of all, these are national. We're really talking about the national basis, not the New York City market here. And yes, there was a very big drop, 8% in 1 month. And that's following up some consecutive months of decreases in the national market. Now, it's also important to look at the annual. You can't look at quarter to quarter necessarily on a national basis because we have seasonal times. Just like people go shopping in Christmas, that's when the retailers make their money.
Right.
We find that the fourth quarter or the winter months tend to typically be slow. So you have to be careful comparing 1 month going into the other. If we looked at the year overall from 2006 to 2007, we really only saw about a 0.7% decrease in the national median price, which is about $217,000. But there are fears coming up, with considerable inventory on a national level, slower time frames to sell the properties, and again, uncertainty out there, some of the subprime market fallout that led to what we believe people holding back a little bit from making purchases. Again, the weather scenario also didn't help this whole process.
And a lot of this, too, is psychological. People read about bad news. It affects their sense of what they're able to afford and what they can get for their properties.
It definitely does, and this is where you look at the Consumer Confidence Index, where people, you look at their spending patterns beyond real estate, and as we discussed, when people are a little bit worried about, let's say, the real estate market, which is a very large part of the national economy, if there are fears on that side, it does tend to make them prevent doing some other, discretionary purchases. So.
Well, no, it's interesting that you brought that up because when we're looking now at the real estate market's effect on the national economy, we're looking at one report that said big pickup truck sales are actually down because these are often bought by people working the construction trades. If the construction business is down, then they're less likely to go buy the big pickup. So you see it affecting auto sales as well.
It definitely does. And again, people taking second mortgages out, things that people would have leveraged their real estate to buy something like a car might have taken some changes as well. But again, now we have to be careful looking forward. As we've seen prior markets where we saw decreases in sales could have been driven by unemployment figures. If we were looking at fears of potential recession, poor economy. Here we have a scenario where nationally we saw a considerable amount of building. I mean, there was really possibly some overbuilding in a sense, and that has brought a lot of inventory to market. Now, as we move forward to the next months, the next quarters, everything is a fluid market. We can't say exactly what is going to happen, but typically, if we move into the spring months, interest rates are still remaining fairly stable. We would anticipate that nobody's expecting any big jumps in the numbers. We would cautiously look at it and say that I expect it to stay somewhat flat as we move forward on the national level. Again, it's hard to compare when you're looking at national, let's say New York City, which we often talk about, where the markets are slightly insulated here in the city as well.
And you're not dealing, when you're looking at, as we look at these apartments and we look at the houses there, you're not dealing with flooding when you live on the 26th floor of a building.
Exactly. Definitely big differences between a house and an apartment in New York City. And then moving forward, again, we anticipate that we'll see some changes. The subprime market itself, they anticipate that we haven't seen the fallout from this as of yet. And there are questions that will be answered over time. And some people are even looking at, on that side, that some of that restrained lending, which we anticipate to happen from the banks, over the long term will help the market in a sense, because it will prevent some people from going out into those markets and purchasing when maybe they shouldn't quite have extended their credit to that level. So that over the next few years, we might see less of this, the kickback from homes going into foreclosure or properties, people defaulting on mortgages. So we have a lot of things to see in the next couple of months.
All right, Darius, thanks very much. I know you're hoping for as good weather as much as everyone else is as well.
Definitely.
Thanks very much for joining us.